when you're training to be the best. Supplementation can mean the difference between winning or losing. That's why I trust Uniting Hollywood Body, the world's #1 natural testosterone booster. Because in a world of competition, why settle for second best? LA Muscle, #1 for results.
Today, when an athlete does excel, the first thing people say is, oh, he or she must be on steroids. I mean, I think it's a complete insult where you get a guy who is under the suspicion of using steroids and has changed his physique dramatically, a baseball player, and said he wasn't using steroids, he was using flaxseed. Well, that to me is an insult to human intelligence, because one cannot make those type of gains and that much size in muscle with just the use of flaxseed. Of course, weight training builds muscle, but there's a limit as to how far you go. And unfortunately, bodybuilding today, as we know it, has totally lost its appeal, certainly for me. And for many people I know from my dad's era. Even guys who came in the 70s who were using steroids find it totally unappealing. It's not appealing to the average person. It's certainly not appealing to the old bodybuilding die-hard fans who stood, many of them, for the natural approach, and many of them who took steroids, but minimal compared to today, cannot relate. When you see a guy competing weighing 270 pounds, 280 pounds, being ripped to shreds and having a low body fat, it's just not normal. But unfortunately, the physiques have lost their appeal because through all the stuff they're taking, the growth hormones and everything else, their waists have become distended, their joints are longer from the foreheads are bigger, the jaws are bigger, the elbows are longer from all the growth hormones, because it's not just muscle that grows, everything grows. They look like comic caricatures of the old superheroes. They actually look like they can't move, with their traps that are totally imbalanced. Their thighs are touching when they walk. Their arms are so far out to the side because of the size of their lats. It does look stupid now. It looks unnatural. In my dad's day, he looked like he could move. Yes, he was big for a normal man, but he competed at around 220, so did Arnold, 225. They were big for the normal person, but they looked like they could move. And Reg was an athlete. I mean, prior to getting into bodybuilding, he was an exceptionally good soccer player. He captained Yorkshire schoolboys and played for Leeds United reserve team at the age of 16. And his desires were actually to go on and play pro football, but he injured his knee and started weight training to rehabilitate his knee. So I think in essence, when you look back, bodybuilding really was the start of personal training. Because whether you want to call it weightlifting or strength training or bodybuilding, we all today, if we exercise, whether it be for sport or just for our own well-being, are doing some form of bodybuilding, really. I have to tell you that prior to and after Reg passed was an extremely overwhelming experience, not just for me but my whole family. Because I knew my dad was famous, but I didn't realize the extent of his fame, and I didn't realize how far it reached. And I had this discussion with Arnold just after he passed, because I was in South Africa obviously at the time, and Arnold called the house and we had a conversation. And I said, you know, Arnold, I'm just totally overwhelmed as to how many calls and cards and emails, etc. I mean, there was a stage where I was carrying 2 phones in my hand the day of his death. I had my cell phone in one hand, the house line in the other, and I was taking calls on both phones. I had 2 people from Australia at the same time, one on my landline, one on my cell phone. I don't even know how many calls I fielded that day. My family kept saying, it's enough, don't take any more. But for me it was a healing process. And Arnold said that your dad transcended bodybuilding. And really, when I think about it, he really did transcend bodybuilding. There's very few bodybuilders, with the exception of Arnold today, of course, because of you know, the notoriety he's got through the movies and through being involved in politics. But when you think back, there are a lot of bodybuilders who are well known in their field, but they didn't really get into the public sector. Lou Ferrigno, yes, to a degree through filming The Hulk. Of course, prior to my dad, Steve Reeves, certainly in America through the Hercules movies and other movies he made. I was woken up at 4:30 in the morning by my mom, and my dad asked me to please place him in a chair at the foot of their bed, which I did. And he asked my mom to lie down, my mom and I to lie down on the bed on our stomachs and perform 5 sets of 5 leg curls. And following that, he asked us to perform 5 sets of 5 leg extensions. And when that was done, I said, "Is there anything else?" He says, "No, that'll be all for now, thank you very much. You can put me back to bed." Which is the way he would deal with his clients, always super polite, "Thank you very much, that's it for now." But I realized that what he was doing was instilling in us the seed and the message to carry on exercising, the importance of exercising. He lived it to his last minute. Watching him sleep, sitting by his side while he was ill, trying to fight this infliction, and he was lying on his back and moving his arms like bicep curl action in his sleep. And I was sharing the story with Arnold, and Arnold said, "It's unbelievable." He said, "Your dad wanted to be the best physique in the world, and then he wanted to spread it to the world, and he wanted everybody to have a physique like him." And so I was blessed to have been brought up with this influence, and I was also privileged to have had the ability to be able to spend time with all these well-known bodybuilders over the years who came and lived in our homes, who we got to know personally. Many of them kept up relationships with. And I have to say, of all of them, Arnold, of course, Franco Colombo, the two that my dad really gelled with and really got on with was Larry Scott, who was an absolute gentleman, and Chris Dickerson. It was interesting that my dad brought Chris Dickerson to come and do exhibitions because he was the first black Mr. America. And I grew up during the apartheid era, which is unfortunate. Never agreed with it. But I can tell you now that Reg, long before apartheid was abolished, was the first gym owner in South Africa to allow a black man to train in his gym. Color was not an issue for him. While I'm touching on the subject of my mom, it's interesting because when my dad first started bodybuilding, my mom, who he met in South Africa, which is why he decided to go and live in South Africa, he was blown away because here was this young supreme ballerina who was gorgeous, movie star looks, and he just was love at first sight. And she went to watch him do exhibitions, and she said she found it quite boring because these guys would get up on stage and show their muscles off, which was impressive, but that was it. And she said, "Why don't you pose to music?" And bodybuilders never used to pose to music. So she, with my dad, choreographed a whole posing routine. And they chose a classical piece of music called The Legend of the Glass Mountain, which became very famous because he would pose to The Legend of the Glass Mountain. Hence the name The Legend, Reg Park The Legend, came about. Today there's not a bodybuilder who doesn't use music, but he was the first one. So he was the pioneer of many, many areas without realizing it. Tom Platz made a great statement once, and he said, "You know, we all stand on somebody's shoulders." He doesn't know whose shoulders Reg stood on. As far as he's concerned, Reg invented it. So I had the opportunity to develop relationships with these bodybuilders, and of course I've kept the relationship with Arnold all these years. In December 2007, he wanted to host a memorial service here in Los Angeles for my dad, which he did. It was attended by over 500 people. And he was very, very gracious. And he said, "The truth of the matter is, if it wasn't for Reg, I wouldn't be here today." And that's quite a statement coming from one of the most famous leaders, our governor, to make a comment like that. They were all extremely supportive during Reg's illness and on his passing. And I'm just very, very grateful and proud that he was so well respected, more than his achievements as a bodybuilder, but for what he stood for, his principles in life. He was highly principled. There was no grey area with Reg. And believe me, it was black or white, and he either liked you or he didn't. And if he didn't like you, you knew. But he had strong reasons not to like you. He had great instincts. He was a fantastic judge of character. And I wish there were more people like that, because I think people have to be forthright and straightforward. At least you know where you stand with them. The world we live in today, especially Los Angeles, they call it La La Land. You know, it's all hail fellow, well met. But with him you got honesty. What you saw is what you got. And I think the world doesn't have enough people like that today. And I think if we did, there'd probably be less problems. I thank you for your time. I'd like to mention that after my dad passed away, my sister, through all her many years of work in non-profit, set up a foundation called the Legacy Foundation in honor of Reg. And the focus of the Legacy Foundation is to raise funds, which unfortunately in this current economic climate is a little bit difficult, but to raise funds for the underprivileged who can't afford a gym membership, who've had injuries, who can't afford rehab because they don't have medical insurance. They've already helped a gym in one of the townships in South Africa today, which my dad, along with Richard Branson, who owns the largest chain of gyms in South Africa called Virgin Active Gyms, helped set up. And they love my dad there. They have a lot of his old weights and pictures of him. So if anybody wants to make a donation, they can go to Reg's website, regpark.com. Even more so today than anything else, people need to exercise, because that's the only thing we have control of, is our bodies. We don't know what's in store for us tomorrow, but at least if we take care of our health, our bodies, that's one less thing that we have to worry about, and that's what we're here to provide.